Thank you for talking to us today. Very excited to talk to you and understand how you have evolved in your personal finance journey. I have known you for over a year now, and there is always something to take away from you whenever I talk to you. I'm glad that we've connected on Twitter and have been in touch since. You have been called the master of connectors. I have seen that over the last 1 year. So how would you introduce yourself to someone who doesn't know you?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been fascinating to sort of both grow as, whether you want to call me it's personal finance, but not really an investor, but whatever I am, I have grown through our conversations. I feel like the last year and a half, I've evolved, and you certainly have had a part to play in that. All of your writing, all of your videos, all of our conversations, all of that sort of stuff. The connector bit is interesting. A lot of people call me that. I guess it's a brand that is given to people who don't have any other real tangible talent. To others, they call them an engineer, they call them product manager, somebody's called an investor, somebody's called an expert in this. I just have a lot of friends, and most of them happen to be very interesting people. And my one line sort of motto in life, what's worked out really well for me is sort of, I always try to make the world a smaller place for people I care about. And that's worked out really well for me. And I have another sort of zinger which says, whatever I do, I'm always trying to optimize for serendipity, which in financial terms, I think we call it optionality. But basically, I'm trying to manufacture luck in any way possible. And I feel like luck is a very important factor in a lot of things.
So you focus on doing that through connections.
It's one of the ways that I do that. It's really helped me. Even for example, the current role that I'm at, I think I landed this by complete chance, right? I was in some room in which I wasn't meant to be. I spoke to somebody I wasn't meant to speak to. I had lunch with them. They invited me to, just basically live on their couch for a month. A month later, I ended up going there, taking them up on their offer to shadow them. Ended up going to a random, and I know, you have yoga runs in your family. I went to a random yoga meetup, and that's where I met somebody who connected me to somebody who connected me to somebody. And so a series of events, fortunate ones, had to happen for me to be where I am today. And I feel that only happens when, you go outside your comfort zone, connect with people, and also make the effort to sort of connect them to other people that you find interesting.
Interesting. So moving our focus to personal finance, you have had, a varied experience in the last 10 years since you started working. Maybe you have done a lot and you have experienced a lot. So what kind of experiences you have had with money, and, what brought your attention to, personal finance, and, what was the aha moment you thought that, you really need to put a system around this?
Yeah, I've been unlucky and lucky in all the right ways. Unlucky because I think one of the core lessons, and now when I've started sort of reading about it and interacting with people like you, one of the first lessons you learn is the power of compounding, starting early. You read about Warren Buffett starting when he was 11, somebody else starting when they were, 12 or 13 or 20 or whatever, right? I was very unlucky in the fact that I never really made real money, what you would call real money, till I was I think about 28, 29. I had to literally sell my first company, have an exit for me to see any real money of my own. I mean, my parents are fairly well-to-do. We're a typical sort of middle class family in India. And I mean that as middle class, not all of us staying middle. I'm no longer middle class, but, middle class in the true sense is how we grew up. They weren't frugal by any sense, but, I always grew up in an environment where debt was looked down upon. And sort of saving was just a habit. In general, I knew that, dad's job is earning, mom's job is saving. That's sort of a very typical middle-class Indian household. But my journey truly only began when I saw some modicum of real money at around the age of 28, 29. And since then, and luckily, I think that's old enough for people like me to have read enough about, what investing is, personal finance is, all that sort of stuff. And I think that allowed me to skip all the obvious mistakes, right? Okay. I think I made, I think even when we spoke the first time or something, I told you, I think I must have made one or two small mistakes, and they still sort of sting me. But I haven't really made any major mistakes per se, so far at least. I'm sure I'll stumble.
What were those couple of small mistakes? I think that's more important to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I think I didn't learn the concept of having an emergency fund till I had an emergency, right? And I think I learned that. Luckily, I didn't learn it in a very hard fashion because I didn't call it an emergency fund, but I just had enough liquidity in order to deal with the emergency, and my family was okay with it. But I think that is one thing that I learned that I think, we talk about a lot of risk and stuff in personal finance, and sort of there's this quote I came across. I can't remember who said it, but risk is everything that's left over after you think you've thought of everything.
That's Morgan Housel.
Is it? No, I think it's somebody
he has written about it. Probably someone else must have said it.
And that's such a fascinating quote, right? Like that's such a fascinating quote. Because life hits you in so many ways and you're not really sure what to do. So having an emergency fund is something that I learned probably the slightly hard way. And that's a mistake I made early on. The other mistake I made is a very small one. I bought some small amount of money. I bought a thematic fund. I thought, consumption is on the rise in India. It's an actively managed fund that I bought very beginning. One of the first purchases on like a mutual fund platform I made was this thematic fund. And I didn't do an SIP or anything, but I just bought it a couple of times, like lump sum amounts. And I think, by the time I learned about index funds, I was like, let's just cut our losses here, get out of it. That's the only two. And I made one more mistake. I think I bought, one stock so far in my life based on a friend's tip, just once.
I think that's forgivable.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, that you were not saving any real money by the time until you were 28, 29. You didn't see real money because you were, your background was that you were running your own company. So obviously, you may not have been making enough money for you to invest outside of the company. So how did you inculcate this habit of starting to save money once you exited your business, your company, and you had some money? How did you avoid the instant gratification thing?
Yeah, so I think the thing about money is when you don't have it for a long enough time, you can only go two ways. You can either go in the direction of, hey, I've been denying myself all of these things and I'm just going to splurge now and buy everything I want, experience everything I want. Or, when between the ages of 22 and 28, when most other friends were sort of, earning a decent chunk of money and buying fancy gadgets, going on, expensive sort of vacations, going out of the country, all of that sort of stuff. I couldn't really experience too much of that. Of course, I had my share of it. It's not like I was like homeless or anything, but I had decent enough income that I could do small amounts of that, but nowhere close to what the average person my age would be able to do. So when I did see money, I just didn't really care about the things that weren't important to me. By then, I had a very clear picture as to what do I want with my money, and then it's only that I spent on. And the concept of a savings rate, even though I didn't know it as a savings rate, was pretty clear in my mind. As soon as the salary hit my account, or as soon as the money from the exit hit my account, I knew what my major basic purchases were, or per month approximately. Running your own business teaches you to become a pattern recognition machine in some ways. So within 2-3 months, you figure out what your expenses are. Once you start paying for them, unfortunately, till 28, I wasn't even in a position to pay for like expenses at home and stuff. Right, like I lived with my parents. But beyond that, I realized that this is X is the amount of expenses I'm having on a monthly basis. Y is my discretionary spend. If Z is my salary, that minus this much is left. And I knew enough about inflation. I knew enough about what happens. I knew enough about asset classes and stuff to basically start investing then, and that helped.
So you practically figured that this money is meant for your financial freedom, and because of the experience which you had in the past of not having enough.
Yeah, and the thing is that entrepreneurship to me has always been it's a less taken path, and I don't recommend it for everyone. I think most people should just study in a good college, get a good degree, get a normal job, stress-free, get a salary, save money. Most people should do that. But then there are outliers, weirdos, whatever you want to call, a small tribe of us who probably are not very employable in the normal sense. I can't really work in a large company. That's just not for me, right? Like I've tried it. It just doesn't work for me. And this is what I'm good at, right? Like I'm good at like sort of the 0 to 1 stuff, building a business where there's nothing, sort of taking it to something that's scalable, and then 1 to 10, and perhaps 10 to 100, and 100 onwards, I'm bored already, right? Like, so that sort of stuff is what I'm good at. And when you do that, you're doing it almost like it's an educated lottery ticket in a sense, right? Like you just need 1 or 2 of these wins to sort of reach financial freedom. But that doesn't mean that you only rely on that, and hence the core sort of part of investing in a fiscally sort of responsible manner while keeping yourself safe. So once you have these small wins, you use that to make your foundation stable so that you don't rely only on sort of lottery wins, and you sort of keep the house running.
So now that you are working in a job, so how do you plan your finances, and what kind of financial goals you have set up for yourself?
Yeah, I think even today at what I do, I don't think of it as a job because I was a very, very early sort of part of the founding team.
Okay.
It doesn't feel like a job.
Hmm.
I still treat it like it's, for all practical purposes, it is, right. And if you were to take illiquid net worth or notional net worth into consideration, I still think most of my net worth is still buried in my current company, right? Like it's equity in the current company. It's that sort of a situation. But if I were to sort of put aside that lens for a bit and think of it as a job, the way I sort of look at it is, I've simplified it as much as possible, right? Like I lead and I don't mean this in a braggy way, but I lead it's not a stressful life, but it's a very busy life. I'm always doing something or the other. I have too many things to do. Which now means I can't think too much about investing or finance. So I needed to almost be on autopilot so that I don't have to worry too much about what my money is doing. I need my money to work for me, but I can't worry too much about it. And in case the equity in the company works out, that's awesome. That's a pleasant and happy outcome. But even if that doesn't, because highly likely chance that goes to zero, right? Like as with any startup, even if that goes to zero, I should still be in a stable position to sort of keep increasing my wealth to an extent where I don't have to work when I'm at a certain age. And that age for me is somewhere around possibly the 40, 42 years old mark. And I'm about a decade or more away from that.
So are you, using the barbell strategy wherein, a lot of you're taking risk only with the money which you are okay to lose, and a larger part is in safer instruments? Can we say that?
Yeah, 100%. It's a very, very barbell strategy.
So when it comes to the the safer side of the barbell, what kind of instruments do you use? Do you invest in regularly, and you think that will protect your money over the longer term and it also grow with inflation?
Index funds, like it's no nonsense, just index funds, right? Like I have one, I think, actively managed fund that I invest in. Might increase to two after talking to you recently, but it's just one actively managed fund that I invest in that it's sort of a flexi cap fund that has exposure to both Indian equity and equity outside the country. Very happy with it, very long term. Just keep pumping money into that. Otherwise, it's mainly just index funds that I put money in. I'm very long on the India story, and I've done well with that. I see no reason not to go with that.
I know that you have also, been writing checks to new startups. So how do you consider risk when it comes to angel investing and your overall portfolio and your overall net worth? How do you make sure that you're okay to lose this money? And how do you also stomach the drawdowns or the, the lock-ins? Because the lock-ins are obviously long in such investments, right? So how do you prepare yourself for such investments?
Yeah, so look, angel investments are not for everybody. Like people, normal janta should not be investing in startups, right? Like you should have, I don't know if I want to call them unfair, but you must have a few advantages, first of all, to even get into angel investing. I feel like the last decade of my life, I've been accruing those advantages. One of the most important advantages you need in angel investing is access, right? A lot of us would have wanted to invest in some startups that are already successful today at the early stage. Even if we had the liquidity, we didn't get the chance. Nobody came and asked us for money. Those founders didn't come to us and ask us for money, right? I am in the through luck or whatever you want to call it, I'm in the fortunate situation where I get some of these founders who are early stage today, who are who've had previous success, who've had one or two exits, who've shown some form of sort of credibility or credentials in the past. I'm lucky that they would consider allowing me on their cap tables today. That is part one. I think access is super important. The second thing that you said is super interesting about the risk part itself, right? I do not think of my investments in startups as investments at all. I have written away this money. This is written off. I am completely okay if this money goes to zero because it is less than, sorry.
That's a very good mental accounting trick, actually. So my next question is going to be on that. Please carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I was saying, if you were to take my liquid sort of net worth, right, like money that isn't in like a house or in equity in my current startup, the one where I'm working or building, I would say less than 12 to 15% is tied up in startups, and I'm completely okay with that going to zero. If it amounts to something, that's awesome. Totally cool if that goes to zero. I think of it as it's like a ticket price that I'm paying to be on the journey with these founders. I'm vicariously living that life with these founders and getting a chance to learn from their journeys through their sectors. It's very varied. I have like investments in all kinds of different sectors. these are either sectors I'm curious about or founders that I'm friends with and really like. So it's a very small price to pay for me to be on that journey.
So largely, these investments are not to grow your wealth, rather than it's more for the relationship and for the learning experience that you're going to get over the next couple of decades.
100%. And I don't mean to sound too altruistic or selfless, but it is my way of giving back to the ecosystem. This whole startup world ecosystem has done a lot for me. It took somebody who was literally unemployable, and not saying I'm very successful today or anything, but whatever little modicum of success I've seen, it's been because a lot of people took their shot and helped me along the way. And now that I have a chance to do that, there are mainly 2-3 things that I can share, right? Like one, I can share whatever little you want to call it knowledge or wisdom or whatever you want to call it. Basically, learnings from my battle scars, I can share that. 2 is a very limited resource that I have, which is time. I can share that with some entrepreneurs, founders. And 3 is money. I think that's the cheapest among the 3. So I should be willing to do away with that.
Nice. So, when we were talking about mental accounting, so Rolf Dobelli, in his book Art of Thinking Clearly and Art of Living a Good Life, he says that he puts aside $10,000 every year to make sure that this is a fund which will pay all his fines and all his expenses which he has not planned in advance. That way, it will not give him a headache when he's paying those expenses, because he is already planned ahead for those. So, what kind of strategies or mental accounting techniques you use when it comes to money? It could also be it could also be for the drawdowns in the equity market. Say March 2020, we saw 40+% drawdown. So how were you preparing yourself to deal with money in such case situations?
I was just super lucky in March 2020. Honestly, I was probably one of the luckiest people around then, because I had superb liquidity then. Like, I had just chanced upon some amazing amounts, at least by my standards, decent amount of liquidity. And I felt like a kid in a candy store. Everything I liked was on sale. And given the learnings from, some of the great writers and investors that I've heard, I didn't really bother with trying to pick parts of the candy that I liked. I just bought small slices of the entire candy store, and I'm doing very well with that kind of approach.
That's awesome. And any other mental accounting tricks do you use?
Yeah, I don't know if this counts as mental accounting per se, but every time now that I'm part of the salaried class per se, I have 3 bank accounts. What I do is I allow the money to come and fall in one account. I have one account just for investments. So as soon as that money comes, there's I think about 50% I take and I just transfer it day one. Another 50, and then there is an account just for spending. So the spending money, which is usually what I know my monthly expenses are or my monthly burn rate is, plus 10% goes into that.
Okay.
And the remaining stays there in the salary account for me to see towards the end of the month if that's going into my, into this fund, where I'm investing, or if there are additional expenses, it's going from there. So it's sort of like a buffer there. And if there are no expenses, then it goes into the investing bit, and it goes and sits in like a liquid fund or something. That's just gets added to the emergency cost.
So have you read Monica Hallan's book called Let's Talk Money?
I have, yes.
So that's the first chapter. Yeah. So that's
where I got that from.
Thing to do. I think everyone who starts initially in their financial journey should implement this. Later in life, maybe it may not matter too much when you are earning. You are a high earner, but absolutely, someone who is a low earner, someone just starting, it's a very great way to build financial habits.
Yeah, and there are some things that I did early on, which I'm grateful for today, right? Like in the beginning, when I wasn't earning as much as I am today, I used to track my expenses very diligently. It became a habit where anything small, like 100 rupees, 200 rupees, I would track it in an expense calculator. Today, I've flipped that equation. I don't track my expenses. I track my investments, because that's a lot larger than this one. I also remember actually the way we connected originally, I think, was I bought you had a savings calculator or savings tracker Excel sheet. I remember buying it and then DMing you and telling you something about it. And then you just said, why the hell did you buy that? You must be at the 80% or 90%. I was. I think I was already going like 80%, something of the sort. But I like these things. I like these small sort of mental models where I can save more and all of that. My risky bets are only 2, and 2 that I sort of understand. Crypto is one where, I've been fortunate that I've just been surrounded by a crowd that sort of understands it, and they've been able to transfer some of that knowledge in a dumbed down fashion to me. It's not like I go and buy some random Dogecoin or altcoin that's going to the moon based on memes or whatever. But what I do understand, it's a very small, again, I've probably written this off worse than startups. Like, I'm completely okay with this going to zero sort of a thing. Small bets in terms of startups. I just tickets, and everything else is basically sort of equities. Most of that is mostly index funds. Most of my emergency stuff, we've spoken about this before, and I've learned a lot from sort of your mental models there as well. It's between bank accounts, cash. I've actually started holding cash because of something that you mentioned early on in our conversations. A lot of liquid funds, stuff like that. So I think of that fund as more of a mix of an emergency fund and an opportunity fund as well, because you never know when the next March 2020 is coming or the next hot startup deal is coming. So it's good to hold.
So now that since that you mentioned crypto, do you think that it's meant for everyone, like someone who like you who has a great network and still doesn't understand crypto in so much detail? I'm sure your exposure is very low right now compared to your role. So someone who can't even understand crypto, should he even bother about investing 1 to 2% of his portfolio?
I don't see any harm in 1 to 2% if you can live without that 1 to 2%. My problem is with people to whom that 1 to 2% matters. If 1 to 2% of your net worth affects your life, then you shouldn't be buying anything, right? For me, like for example, even despite having all of this, my crypto exposure is less than my gold exposure.
Right.
And it's not like I understand gold, but I understand gold.
And for the listeners, let your brother Nitin, I'm sure both of you live together, right? He is a crypto expert, and he has a very large part of his portfolio in crypto because he understands this instrument. So I think it's a very good strategy that you are following, that you are only investing in things you understand rather than trusting someone else and putting your money because of someone else's opinion.
No, 100%. And also, we're brothers, so we don't want to be concentrating everything on the same asset class. I understand startups. I invest in startups. He invests alongside me occasionally, but that's just a small portion of his net worth. He understands crypto, so he invests a lot more in crypto. I understand it via him, so I invest a small amount there. So we're sort of hedging our bets in that sense. That's always fun to do.
That's a great advantage you have.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's we've been very fortunate. We grew up in similar surroundings, same upbringing, literally the same parents, same household. Financial situation was a little different by the time he was born. My parents were slightly doing better by then, but I think it sort of forced us to learn very quickly about money and sort of figure out what we should do when we earn our own money.
So we are in a very, in a mad bull market right now. And even in the last 1 week, I see my portfolio going up significantly. So and I keep telling myself that because I keep my money, if I've invested in equity once, I'm not going to withdraw it for the next 30 years. So that's how I invest in equity. So I have to keep reminding myself that I am in this for the next 30, 40 years. So how do you, convince yourself about the long term? How do you think about long term, and what is the long term strategy for you?
Yeah, so very similar to you. I read this somewhere, it's not my original thing, but every time you sell a stock or sell a unit of a mutual fund, you're admitting to yourself that you made a mistake, basically, is sort of how I think about it. I think I read it in a book called Richer, Wiser, Happier, which you recommended to me. Yeah. I think chapter 6 is what you recommended, and I thoroughly love that. Yeah.
Nick Sleep's idea is that if you can't find a reason to sell a business, why should you sell it? Overvaluation is not a reason. So, and then he also talks about a couple of businesses like Walmart. There has been no single day or any one reason that would cause you to sell that stock in the last 50 years. So that kind of that has been a great influence on my life, honestly, in the last few months. After reading that book, my outlook has also changed dramatically. On how I invest in equity now. So I think it's a great book and everyone should read it.
No, I love it. It's really, I think I highly recommend that book. I've only actually found time to read that one chapter. I haven't read the other chapters. I have listened to a lot of Monish Pabrai's lectures on that chapter, post his sort of, change in terms of his philosophy of investing. And it's been fascinating. I've been making notes. And also I'm very fortunate that what I'm building right now, my company, is showing early signs of being an apex spawner. So hopefully that works out well. Yeah.
I will link that video also in the show, in the description, so that people can take a look. It's a lecture given by Monish Pabrai to one of the universities. So the next thing we move on to is, so for someone who is say 21, 22 years old, how should he focus on, according to you, how should he focus on personal finance, and how much weight should he give to personal finance versus learning, or versus gathering other experiences in life? How do you think about it?
Yeah, look, I think the cop-out answer is to say it depends, but I will try to be a little more specific. These are suggestions, not prescriptions by any sense. I feel like your 20s, unless you are in a hurry to be financially free, which I know you were sort of,
Yes.
you've saved up, invested sort of in your
Yes.
early 20s, and uh, I think you're financially independent by the time you're 31, 32. Um, unless you have that goal, that maturity, that hunger, that drive, and it takes a certain kind of uh, and forgive me for saying this, it takes a certain amount of or kind of damage early on for you to even be driven by that. Not everybody can go that way, right? Like you have to have a certain quality of wounds or battle scars in your life for you to
Yes.
even be driven by that.
Absolutely.
For example, the other example I give is somebody I've never met, but I learn a lot from him, Pattu from Thief and Cal.
Hmm.
Some of his early life sort of, disasters in his life and stuff like that,
Yeah.
tragedies lead you to sort of go that way. But if you are if you have a normal sort of life without too many ups and downs, use your 20s to sort of save money, certainly invest money if you have the ability to. Uh, don't try not to become a victim of lifestyle inflation. It's very easy to buy that fancy gadget, that fancy laptop, go on that expensive
Hmm.
vacation, all of that sort of stuff. Travel by all means. I feel like traveling has really opened up, the world to me, and it's helped me a lot. You should spend on experiences. One thing you should certainly spend on is sort of, yourself, right? Like whether it is books, whether it is courses, um, whether it is sort of just spending on money on sort of places where you become a better version of yourself, either professionally or personally. You should spend on that. But if you have the ability to save and start investing early on, please invest in asset classes that you understand, or at
Hmm.
least ones that historically have done well. And try not to play around. I see a lot of youngsters, even people my age actually, try to almost get into this mindset of wanting to make like that, I don't know what they call it, smart beta, smart alpha, whatever. They want to make incrementally high amounts of money, and they will spend all day on their favorite trading app, buying in the morning, selling in the evening, buying today, selling tomorrow. They try to learn options, start these futures. You should have more meaningful things to do in your life, unless you want to go pursue that as a profession. You should have something meaningful to do in life, and finance should be just like you brush your teeth and you wear clothes and you learn, perhaps how to navigate and stuff like
Yeah.
that. This is just another thing. It's another life skill that you just pick up, and it should be on autopilot. It should just be another part. You shouldn't worry too much about it. Just leave it to the experts or leave it to the market to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. So in the initial stages, people who spend time on these trading apps, trying to make that incremental amount of money, it really doesn't impact their overall net worth, because their starting net worth is only very small, very little. So ideally,
It's
how I
laughable.
think, yeah, it's laughable. How I think about it is they should focus on their area of work and try to increase income and try to first create a corpus to generate any kind of returns on that, right?
I,
So
I'll tell you
yeah,
something. I'll tell you something I haven't really shared much before outside. I had a normal sort of a job right out of college when I was 22, like most people do,
okay,
right? Entry level sort of job. I used to write, I used to ghost write content for B school publishers like Pearson, McGraw-Hill, Wiley, all of that. That was my first job. Of course, now I am at a fairly early stage startup, and I'm it would because I have so much skin in the game. It does not make sense for me to take a market salary. What market salary would be for somebody with my
right,
level of experience or expertise, whatever you want to call it.
sure.
But just prior to this, when I was sort of had started a few companies, had seen some modicum of success, and uh, was sort of freelancing as a consultant and helping other companies.
Hmm.
I'm talking around March 2020, Neeraj. That is when the
Yeah,
markets were down.
yeah.
I was making more money per day than I made per month when I started earning.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, that happens. So,
Right?
so
And that's between like 9 years, 8 or 9 years, basically.
yeah, absolutely. So, a time comes, in your net worth, you can call it net worth, your portfolio, when the daily movement will be more than your monthly income or your annual income. So, all you have to focus is on accumulation rather than chasing returns.
Basically, right? And if I had spent time in my 20s trying to optimize how I make a few thousand rupees more in the markets or somewhere else, that would have been a waste of time. I had so much fun. I met so many people. I had the weirdest possible jobs. I started companies with friends. I failed gloriously. I succeeded. I did all kinds of things. And I think that set me up for a path in my 30s where really I have a safety net. Nawal talks about this. Drop me off in an English speaking country with a laptop and an internet connection, and I'll
Yeah,
come back to whatever my net worth is, soon. Right.
yeah,
And it takes a certain amount of battle scars for you to get to that point. But when you get it, like, I'm not maybe it's because I'm ambitious, maybe it's because I'm not frugal enough, but I don't think I am in that bucket of I'm already financially free. And I don't know if what that number is, and I have ideas, but I don't know that. But I certainly am in a position where I can go back to zero today, and I'm very confident of getting back to where I am very, very quickly.
Yeah, Nawal has mentioned that if you drop him in 99 out of 100 parallel universes, he will make sure that he is financially independent.
Yeah. And I think that kind of confidence only comes from hitting like sort of rock bottom and then coming back up to what is a reasonable modicum amount of I wouldn't call it success, but contentment at least.
Yeah. And any other kind of systems that you have set up around your personal finances, apart from your salary going into 3 different buckets and then going into the investments, any other systems which you have set up?
I don't know. So in terms of investments as well, I try to make my investments, I don't automate anything. Like, I'm a huge fan of the concept of SIPs, and I believe most people should do them. But I personally don't do that just as an exercise in discipline for myself. It's not that I'm trying to time the markets or anything of that sort. I don't do any of that. But I get a certain amount of joy in picking a random day and invest. I'm very boring when it comes to that, right? Like, the only exciting parts of my life are buying crypto dips and investing in startups when I get a good opportunity. But those are rare. It's not like I'm doing that every day, although I spend a lot of time on those. But for about 70% of my portfolio is in all boring stuff like index funds and liquid funds and one actively managed fund and ELSS funds and stuff like that. So it's fairly boring in that sense. I also have the advantage of at my current organization, we have an allowance for some of the other expenses. So if you eat out, you have a certain budget. For the books you buy, the courses you buy, we have a certain allowance or a budget. For any software that you buy, you have a certain amount of budget. Any hardware you buy, all of that sort of stuff. So that forces me to save some of my bigger expenses so that I can expense it to the company on that front.
Right.
I don't know about investing, but I do have, like, I love spending money. And I love spending money on things that really make sense to me. Like, for example, I spend a lot of money on software, productivity software. I pay, I think, $30 a month for my email. I pay $10 a month for my calendar, things that other people use for free, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at me funny when I say that, right? Like, $30 a month is almost 2,400, 2,500.
Yes.
Yeah, 2,200 with taxes, everything, it comes up to 2,200 rupees. $10 a month is still, I think, around 800 rupees after taxes and all of that, 900 rupees. But that's a very small price to pay when you value your time, right? Like, for me, an hour of my time is worth a fair amount of money. I'm not saying I'm not Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos, but an hour of my time is worth a lot of money. And if I can save 2-3 hours, I will throw money at that problem. Anything that I can, whether it's a scheduling tool, whether it's something that allows me to, use email faster, I'll spend money on that. On books, I have a very simple rule. This is a promise I made to myself when I turned 30 years old. I said, anytime a friend or a well-wisher says, Nikhil, you may like this book, I do not question it.
Let's go and buy
Not
it.
that I have to finish. I have to both buy it and start it.
Yeah.
I don't have to finish it. I don't force myself to finish any book. Life is too short, too many bad books. But if somebody recommends it, I think every book that you have recommended to me so far, I have bought it and started it. Some of them I have finished it. Right? So it's, I have a set of friends and well-wishers. You're certainly among them. If they say there's a book you might like, the next 3 minutes, it is in my Kindle.
Yeah. So recently I did a video, where I talked about when it comes to spending money, if it improves my life, by any ways, it could be a thing, it could be an experience, or it could be an app, I am okay to spend that money. So you are also following that philosophy, which is good, because
no, 100%.
If it can improve your life in any sense, then it's a very good trick to mental model, actually, which people can apply, that because eventually it will give you larger returns. It may not give you returns in the shorter term, but absolutely. I have been paying a lot of money for running. People will say, why do you need a coach for running? But you need a coach for everything, and you don't understand until you hire that coach.
No, 100%. I'm looking to work with a performance coach, like an executive coach, just to get better at my job, and that's something I'm willing to pay a lot of money for. I'm in the process of screening a few potential sort of coaches to work with there. The other thing that I sort of love spending money on is I love gadgets, and I don't buy. I'm not the kind of person who will buy a phone and buy the next fancy phone. If I buy a phone, it's with me for the next 4 years, 5 years, whatever. If I buy a good laptop, it's with me for like the next 4 years, 5 years, whatever. But what I buy is going to be of very, very high quality.
The best one.
The best
it absolutely
one,
makes sense. It absolutely makes sense, because you don't want to replace a laptop or a phone every 2 years, right? You would rather pay some extra money and use it for the next 6-7 years. Yeah.
So I something like, for example, I love comfortable footwear. I don't understand collecting sneakers and stuff, but I love comfortable footwear. So I found the most comfortable pair money could buy, quite expensive, but I bought them, and now I don't think I'm going to change that till there's wear and tear enough that I have to change it, right? So that sort of stuff. I don't spend money on clothes because I don't care. Like this is a t-shirt like my brother got in some random conference, right? Like these are things that don't even matter to me. Eyewear matters to me, so I buy the best quality there. So what matters to me, like for example, I spend a lot on my health. I have like two wearables. I don't know if you can see this, but I have like a continuous glucose monitor. I have like an Apple Watch that's like tracking my heart health, my glucose, like a whole bunch of stuff. I take that super seriously, and I'm sitting in my study where I have like a mini gym built here because when the pandemic began, my brother and I realized we're not hitting the gym anytime soon. We're going to be home, and we just bought a setup at home so that we can work out without leaving the confines of our home. We're in Bangalore where the weather is perfectly fine, but there are 2-3 months when it gets hot, and so every room that we spend time in has an AC. It's only on for 2-3 months, but it's a small price to pay to have the comfort of being comfortable during those 2-3 months. So things like that we spend money on. Unnecessary spending I don't understand, and I just don't do it. So
again, just to reiterate this for the larger audience, even all of this spending for Nikhil is a very small part of his monthly income. So do not take this as an advice and start spending money on things you cannot afford. So it takes some time to reach that level where you are okay to spend $100 or $200 every month on a recurring basis on things which can improve your life. But you should not start doing it as soon as you start making money.
No, I 100%. Sorry, I don't mean to give out that impression. I think first spend some time on making sure your time is valuable, and when your time is valuable, spend money to make sure you get more of your time. Like I think that would be like a model I would describe.
Yeah. So Nikhil, your Twitter profile says that you want to be happier, wealthier, healthier, and wiser version of yourself. So what kind of steps, we have discussed a lot already, but are there any other steps that you take on a daily basis? Are there any kind of routines you have in life to make sure that you are improving on either of the fronts on a daily basis? We have discussed how you deal with your money and how you invest every month, but what about the other aspects?
See, I think the most important one of all of this is health, whether it's physical or mental. I think it's super important. I haven't been able to build a consistent habit of meditation, but I think I do more than the average person. So out of 30 days in a month, I think I manage to meditate about, 10 to 15 days a month on average. I'm meditating. Sometimes I have longer streaks going on. I find that to be super helpful, just in terms of clarity and sort of focus. The other thing I do is every day, and I'm part of an accountability group with a few friends, where it's just a WhatsApp group where every day all of us are accountable to each other to move our body for 30 minutes. It could be 30 minutes of walking while you're on calls, or it could be 30 minutes of lifting weights, or a combination of the two. It could be yoga, it could be Pilates, it could be anything. But 30 minutes every day, and there is one of the people there even keeps score, so that at the end of the month you know how much who has done, and you have to gamify, right? Like the human mind is like that, where if you gamify things, we fall prey to that. All the marketing tactics work on the average person, or even the above average person. So I do that and make sure every day I'm moving my body in some way. The other change I've made since lockdown is I've stopped eating out unnecessarily. I do eat out, I do order in occasionally, but it's very rare now. It's probably like 4 or 5 instances in a month of sorts, which used to be a much larger amount. And now with this glucose monitor, I'm also figuring out how my body reacts to different foods, and it's forcing me to be more disciplined. I'm not snacking as much. I'm having like larger meals at the right times, stuff like that. That helps on the health front. In terms of wiser, I don't know if I put any conscious effort into that. I think life takes care of that itself by sort of giving you the right amount of meetings at the right amount of time. But one thing I do is I'm always trying to consume. I'm as mindful of my content diet as I am of my physical sort of diet in terms of food, right? Like, so I make sure I don't, and I have nothing against people who do all of this. So I'm not trying to go on a moral high ground or anything, but I can't justify myself binge watching like every series that is released, or watching every new movie that is released, right? Like life is too short for that. And I'm not somebody who can appreciate that much. I have my obsessions. I love esports, video games. I love a few sports. I watch F1 very religiously. I watch parts of cricket very religiously. I watch certain players in tennis those I enjoy, and there are a lot of less. So I watch that. Movies and series, not so much, right? Like few parts here and there. But otherwise, usually you'll find me listening to either a podcast or an audiobook, or watching some videos on YouTube. I'm loving all the content you're putting out these days. And otherwise, I'm reading a book. I'm just like, wherever I am, I have a device nearby or a book nearby, and I just pick that up. Another thing I forgot to tell on the spending part is, it's not just books. I love spending money on other, services or apps that help me with this. So for example, YouTube Premium, right? Like, no brainer.
Yeah,
I'm never going back to
absolutely.
regular YouTube. Audible is gold, right? Like, I don't care if they 10x their price. I'm always going to keep
True.
using Audible. So
True.
things like that are very important to me, and
Yeah.
I enjoy that.
Interesting. So one more thing, you recently mentioned, I was going through your Twitter profile. You said, I envy people who can do things in moderation. I have no such luxury. It's either going to be full-blown obsession or zero fucks, nothing in between. Tell us more about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I really can't do anything in moderation. It's just a personality trait, I think. For example, now that I'm into health, I will go, like, just a fitness example, right? Like, I can't be somebody who says I will eat occasionally well, some of my meals will be good, some of them won't be, or I won't actually track my calories, but I'm going to do that. No. I have a weighing scale in my kitchen. Everything that goes in my mouth gets measured. It goes into an app where I find out what the calories and what the macros are. I have a continuous glucose monitor that's telling me what my body's metabolism to that is. I have a watch that tells me how many steps I'm going. It tracks how many calories I'm burning. So it's like full blown. Same with sort of investing, right? Like when I realized, hey, now I need to do something about money, I probably read more books and watched more videos before, committing to a path.
Right.
Than most, and that's why I say I'm fortunate, right? Like, I probably wouldn't have done it if I had money when I was 22. I was lucky that I had money only when I was 28. So then I had enough time to do all this, or at least enough, maturity to do all this. So it's sort of like that. And nobody has, at least I don't have the bandwidth to care this much about all things in life, right? Like, you have limited time, limited bandwidth. So what I do with high intensity. What I don't, I just let go of it. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't know what the latest music is or what the latest movies are or what. It doesn't matter to me.
But do you think
I will follow something.
Do you think that everyone should implement this kind of strategy in their lives, or being a generalist is also okay?
I very much think I'm a generalist in terms of my skill set in work. I'm not a specialist by any means. But this moderation thing, if you have the ability to be moderate about everything in life, then that's perfectly fine. If you know how to balance, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. For me, this just happens to be. It's a compulsion for me. I really can't do anything in moderation.
One great thing I have learned from you over the past 1 year is about paying it forward. You mentioned it in the beginning of our conversation. Can you throw some more light on this and how one can practice this and implement this in their own lives? Because everyone knows something and has had some experiences which can be useful to someone else. So how can others learn and implement this in their own lives?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, I think in my life, I always have any topic that I want to get good at, right? Any sector of my life I want to get good at. I don't know where I read this. I think this was a boxing example I read or something. But I feel like I should always have 3 people minimum in my life per sector, right? So for example, let's take startups, right? Like, I need 3 kinds of people in my life. I need plus, I need minus, and I need equals. Plus is mentors who are 5 to 10 years ahead of the game, whatever the game is. It could be personal finance, it could be startups, it could be fitness. Minus are people who are 3 to 5 years behind me in the game. And equals are people at the exact same stage or approximately the same stage that I'm at. From the people who are my mentors, who are ahead of the game, I have a very simple ask. I keep asking them, whatever you achieved in, if they're 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead of me, can you teach me how to do that in 1 year? Right? And most of them do, right? Like, I'm pretty sure if I spent enough time, or if somebody who's 22 spent enough time with you, and you were able to share all of your best nuggets, they could probably reach financial freedom 3 years before you did.
True.
Right? Same way, I need somebody, and I'm a huge fan of Richard Feynman, and I believe that teaching is the best way to learn.
Yeah.
And so my pay it forward is not all as selfless as it seems. I'm also learning a lot when I'm teaching somebody or passing on stuff, right? It's a great way for me to stay sharp, because if there is an early stage founder that I'm talking to, they probably are asking me questions I hadn't thought of. Or if there is a, in certain circles, like let's say product management, there's an early sort of product manager who's talking to me. they probably know a lot more or asking better questions than I could ask when I was their age. And I probably have to go read up something or talk to two other people to come back and answer them or connect them to somebody else. So I like having that meanness. The equals, I enjoy having peers who are mostly around, sort of my life stage or age. And I have some very interesting peers. And these people help me pull up my socks. I have fascinating, amazing friends, and I certainly count you as one of them. Where I look at you people, and it's not an envy or a competition thing. It's very healthy, but you make me want to up my game, right? Like Neeraj read like 5 books, and he was able to, finish this content. Plus, he's having like a business that he's building. He's able to make time for running. Could I be doing something better to optimize my day? Could my week look a little better? That sort of thing. And that's enough drive where, sort of we are growing together. And that's how most of our conversations are when we have one-on-ones, right? Like it's a little bit of me learning from you, you learning from me sort of thing. I feel people miss out on the peer bit. A lot of people mentor, a lot of people, learn from other mentors. One of the most magical things that's happened to me, especially during lockdown, is having recurring sort of calls with peers like you, where once in 3 weeks, once in 4 weeks, we're having 1 hour conversations with no agenda, right? People, I hate the word networking, right? Like it makes it very transactional. I say just have interesting people around you, have interesting friends, and don't have agendas. All your calls don't need to have agendas. And of course, as you grow older, also be very ruthless about what you say no to. You can't keep having no agenda calls. Your time is precious. So know who you're giving that time to and have fun with it. So because if I said yes to everybody I wanted to talk to or who wanted to talk to me, I would be just doing that 24/7.
You have to be ruthless when you say no, and figuring out who is the right person to talk to is another. Maybe I think I can call it a skill, because you will know by through time only, as you talk to people and learn and understand who is adding value to your life and who is not adding value to your life.
Yeah, and it's not even about value addition. It's more about, are they respecting the time that you give them, sort of thing, right? Like not everyone I talk to is probably adding value. And that's another reason why I paid forward, right? Because that whole karmic concept of, pay back does not happen in today's world. If I help you, I shouldn't be expecting you to help me in the same amount or in the same way. The reason you needed help is because you're not in a position to do that. If that works out that way, that's awesome. Whatever, you can call it divine, you can call it anything. But I don't believe in that, right? Like I'm not helping anybody out of expectation that they help me back. And I've been lucky that a lot of people also help me that way in sort of my path so far, whether it was up or down or whatever. A lot of people help me. And the least I can do is help some more people manufacture luck. It takes a few minutes, it takes a little bit of an effort, and it can make somebody's day. You never know what that, butterfly flapping wings is that will lead to somebody's career or somebody's life completely changing. It's a beautiful feeling.
Great takeaways, Nikhil, from this conversation. I think this is the right time to end this conversation with such amazing thoughts from you. Just last one thing, which I think it would be good for the listeners. So any recommendations, any kind of any recommendations for beginners, largely from personal finance point of view, or from any other skill building point of view, or anything which you think that a beginner should focus on when they are starting their financial lives, their relationships, and then their marital life, whatever, could be anything.
Yeah, look, I think keep it as simple as possible, especially if investing in personal finance or finance is not your profession. Keep it as simple as possible. You probably have other skills that are a better way for you to spend your time, energy, everything. Money is just a very small part of it. Try to automate as much as possible. Don't put effort into that, and try to educate yourself as to what has worked in the past. Usually, what's worked to a large extent will continue to work. So don't try to drain yourself of energy by doing these things. Read a few good books, listen to some good lectures. I think you have some good content. People should certainly check out some of your earlier sort of videos. Like get the basics right? Like all of your insurances, your emergency funds, knowing where your money is, all of that sort of stuff, get that right. And then the rest will sort of fall in place. Don't do the fancy stuff till you're in a position where you can say the fancy stuff going kaput does not matter to me, right? Like it should not matter. It really, like, even the large purchases, if I can't buy like 4 of my phone, I won't be buying it. Like if I buy 4 of these phones and they break and it still doesn't make me lose sleep, like optimizing for sleep, right? Like the best thing you can have in life is peaceful sleep in the night, and try to do things towards that direction. The rest, if you play the game long enough, I think it should take care of itself. I haven't played it for too long, but whatever I have, it seems to be trending in that direction, that if you play the game long enough, it will take care of itself.
Yeah, long-term game and optimizing for sleep. Great takeaways, Nikhil.